The recording lady has spoken. Okay, here's what we're going to be talking about today. How to be kind and not nice. Nice is enabling, kindness is clarity. We're going to talk about what nice looks like and what kind looks like. And then I'm going to show you how to have a conversation with kindness. It's a conversation that has to be had, and it may be uncomfortable, and it may be in your mind a conflict, but needs to be had. So whether this is with your spouse, with your kid, with your team, with a client, with your boss, with a colleague, with whoever, sometimes there are some things you really, really want to say, but you're not entirely sure how to set it up so it comes across well. That's what we're going to be covering today. So what does it mean to be nice? You'll see that there's a giant blank page because I'm going to write down stuff that is going to be nice, and we're gonna chit chat about it. So being nice sounds like this. Can you do better? It sounds like this. Okay. It sounds like, what else does it sound like? Being nice is usually people pleasing. You're trying not to make waves. So an example would be, I'm on your team, I'm underperforming, right? You come in to talk to me about it because as a team lead, you get a portion. Let's say you're in real estate as a team lead, you get a portion of my sales. Okay, but I'm not getting any sales for you. So I'm really just a giant expense up to this point. You bring me into your office. And this is what nice sounds like. Hey, Rebecca, do you think you can do a little bit better? Do you think you can, right? There's another one. Do you think, right, that you could do you think you can do this? Here's another one signed. Would you mind? Would you mind maybe picking up the slack a little bit? Would that be okay? Would that be all right? And so what happens is, me as your team, I'm like, okay, I feel guilty. This is what happens. You are my team lead. You're trying to be nice. You're laying on me real soft, but I know what you're trying to say, because there's no way I don't know that I'm underperforming. So immediately, what do I feel? I feel guilt. Immediately, what do I want to do with that guilt? I want to get rid of it. Goodbye, off my plate. I don't want to feel this guilt anymore. I'm guilty about not performing. And so what do? I kick that down the road. I blame it on other things. Oh, well, you know what? I really haven't had a lot of time because my dog, yes, I got a new dog. Or, the market has been so tough. Or, it's so hard when there's so many things I need to learn. And I can come up with the world's greatest excuses as to what can actually, in my mind, explain away the poor performance. What I'm actually doing from a psychological perspective, the person who's feeling guilty, is I am assigning the blame to something else so that I don't have to take responsibility for it myself. Okay, and that's what I'm doing. Unfortunately, it backfires because I'm going to leave that meeting with you, at which point you maybe just tell me, well, can you do better? Like, okay, like just try. Ooh, my favorite nice word. Just try. Could you try to do something else? Would you mind? Would it be okay? Those are all nice phrases that are going to get you absolutely nowhere, because in no way, shape, or form does it put any responsibility back on that person that you're talking to, that person who you really need to kind of take some ownership of whatever's going on, using their shame blame process, right? It's the guilt complex. It's like, I don't want to have this, launches it on something else, blames something else, which will sound justifiable because you'll be like, well, the market has been shit, right? Or, well, new puppies do take a lot of time. Or, yeah, I've got kids, young kids too, and I know that they can take up a lot of time, or whatever they've blamed their lack of performance on. It'll sound logical. And you will then, because you don't want to rock the boat, or you don't want to make them upset with you, you want them to like you, right? So that desire to be liked is very much something that can bite you in the ass pretty hardcore. You let them go with a, okay, do better kind of a thing. Okay, we are not going to be nice. Okay, we're not going to be assholes, but we're not going to be nice. Instead, we're going to flip that to being kind. So let's replay that conversation. you're the team lead, I'm the underperforming person on your team. Walk into the office, you're like, "Hey, Rebecca, I've noticed that you've been putting a lot of effort on whatever," right? So we're going to get into validate, and notice, right? Specifically notice something. So I didn't say, I see you're working hard. Hey, Rebecca, I've noticed that you've put a lot of effort into, you know, mailers or coming into the office or, showing up at meetings. Try to find something, you want to find something good that you start off with. It's like, I noticed, but you have to be very specific with your feedback. You just get, I've noticed you put in some effort. In what? By the way, this is really good for helping your kids. Your kids need to know additionally, like if you're giving them positive feedback about what. You can't just say, like, I've noticed you got good marks. The better thing is the thing that they can control is their effort. I've noticed you put a lot of effort into getting the good marks that you've achieved, right? So you talk about the person and what behaviors they have been demonstrating. Okay, so that's where we start. Then you go into the kindness. Kindness is, hey, Rebecca, do you remember when you signed on the sort of the minimum performance levels that we had established? Yes. Well, you know that you're not really living up to those at the moment. Yes, I do know that. It makes you feel really bad. And now, as the person, I might be like, the shame is coming up, the guilt is coming up, and I want to hot potato that shit off of me as fast as I can. Before you let the person roll with all their emotions and fly out the window with themselves and stop actually listening to you, you've got to go, you validate then the feelings, right? Then you validate feelings. That must feel really difficult for you to know that you're not performing. Yes, it does. Now, what have you got? You've got them sitting there realizing, okay, it's okay to have this guilt and shame. It's supposed to be here. I'm supposed to kind of feel bad with it. Then what you do, I don't know if you guys were attending the, other conversations I've had with how to talk to people. You don't ask why. We don't want to ask why. We start asking what. We start asking how. We start asking when. And we start asking where. What is it that has made it difficult for you to step up? How can you make some changes? Side note here, do not at any point in time here say, how can I help you? Okay, what are you doing? You're taking ownership for the shit they need to do. Nah, you got to give it back to them. Okay, how can you do something that will, circumvent the problem, give yourself more time, open up your schedule? So now you're getting into, okay, these are the things that they can do. You can, by all means, assist them with this part of the conversation. When can I expect to see either if you have a deliverable, or can I say, when do you think you are going to be able to see results? Because if you know what you need to do and you know how you need to do it, when are we going to actually start seeing some results? And where are some areas that, that can be improved? Again, at all of these stages, you can offer assistance. Okay. But at none of these stages do you take responsibility. That's the difference between nice and kind. Nice is you assume the responsibility of that person. You take it on for yourself. Usually, and I've seen this so many times with teams that have a team lead and underperforming team members, the team lead is running themselves ragged, trying to hold everybody up, because they're like, okay, it's okay, don't worry, it's okay, I'm fine, right? This is also fine land, right? Where people are like, I'm fine, it's fine, everything's fine, I'm fine, you're fine, everything's fine. Not fine at all. In kind land, it's a very different place. You are not being a jerk. You are not calling them names. There's no shaming. There's maybe consequences, but delivered with kindness, because you kind of need to do that with some people. But what it is it's clear. The number one thing here that you will find with, that was terrible. Hang on a second. That was so dramatic. The number one thing, back to this, that you will find that comes out of being kind is clarity, right? And that was in the subtitle. Clarity above all. Yep, put it down so you guys can semi-read my horrific writing. Because what clarity allows people to understand is the objective parameters, not subjective parameters. So objective. Do you know what it means to be a high performer in this team? Yes. Okay. Do you know where things are getting a little bit difficult? Yes. Do you know what you need to do? Do you know how to do those things? And do you know when you should start seeing results? Clarity, 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 clarity. And the person now has an opportunity to explore those, ask for help if they need it, right? Like, what help do you need? Right? Not, again, not how can I help you? Do not assume someone else's responsibility for something that they need to take responsibility for. But you can say, what kind of help do you need? How are you going to do it? What changes can you make? What adjustments can you make? And then you get into like what I call like barrier type conversations. What's in your way? And they're like, me, I'm in my way. Okay, great. That's like the number one response, by the way, for like when you ask people a barrier type question. So what's really in your way? Me. Okay, welcome to me land. You got to figure out the who, what, when, no, why, how, and where that is actually the block, because the block may not be and have anything to do with the work that they're doing. It often is up in here. It's mindset. They are overwhelmed by what are called distortingly large emotions. So emotions that are too big create small thinking. They distort your view, right? So if I have fear, my intensive last week, I talked about you need just enough fear to have enough fuel for your jetpack to take you where you need to go, right? Like the guy I talked to yesterday, he has just enough fear to get off his ass and do the work he knows he needs to do because I'm calling him in 30 days. And I'm going to ask him, like, hey, what are you doing? Right? So that's just enough fear versus the overwhelming fear of, I don't even think I'm capable of handling anything and everything's going to go wrong. And you build up this horrible catastrophic vision and then you do absolutely nothing. Okay. So helping people to understand what the process is to go from big to small can be really helpful. And if you're wondering what that is, it's called Mind Over Mood. And I taught it about a month ago. Okay, so it's about how do you take a big emotion and make it small and manageable. So this is the difference between nice and kind, right? So give me a thumbs up, give me a yep. I want to make sure that before I carry on, because I'm going to show you how to have a conversation about being like using kindness. I want to make sure you guys get the difference between nice and kind. Just give me a yes, or you can use a little reaction, dude. You can give me a little whoop. Hearts are fine. Yep, good. So Pat and Chuck, good to see you guys. Catherine, yes, good. Yep, happy faces. Super happy faces. Woo! All right, so you guys get what I'm putting down. This is really, really great. Okay, so nice is enabling. Nice usually has a bit of a whitey voice in your head. You're like, okay, it's okay, fine. Whereas kind is just like unequivocal, firm. Okay, bringing you back, and we're going to talk about that in just a second. Okay, so how do you have a conversation that is kind? So this is actually from a training I've offered a bunch of times. Oh, that didn't exactly go well. I'm going to have to rewrite what it says there. Oops. So this is a training I do called Necessary Conversations, and it's pulled from a book called Necessary Endings. So Necessary Endings by Henry Cloud. There may or may not be a doctor in front of Henry. Wonderful book if you are not really good at like important conversations. So I don't like calling them conflict or like even those kind of conversations. Someone in my program a long time ago calls them careversations, right? Or yeah, so it's about the care. I think that's what it is. I think it is. Anyway, they have the word care in there anyway. So the point is you're having a difficult conversation with great care and with great love. So the first place you start, I'm just going to see so you guys can see this, is beginning with the end in mind. Okay, so when you go into the conversation, you already know how you would like this to end. Because if you don't, what can happen is somewhere in the conversation, if emotions go wild, right, and the person gets really defensive, or you get really hot, or something really happens and everything goes spicy, you're going to lose the thread. And I've had people in my life in the past who would instantly make a conversation personal and I would get what I call TV snow in my head. So I am old enough to know what TV snow looked like. For those who don't know, there might be people young enough in here that have never seen TV snow. At the long, long time ago in a land far away, you used to have like TV channels that eventually would run out of programming. And when they ran out of programming, it was those bright yellow colored bars, or it was just like that static black and white TV snow. So that's what actually what happens to my brain. And that's what happens to most people's brains when an aggressor comes at you and makes something personal. Having the end in mind negates their ability to do this to you. This has been one of the most important lessons I make because I was the queen of taking everything personally. In addition, I was queen of many different provinces, one being self sabotage, the other one being taking shit personally. So, really had that one nailed. And so I needed a way to know how can I have a difficult conversation with a difficult person who may make things personal for me and not go TV snow, right? That static, that I don't know what to do. And then you get defensive, and then the whole conversation is lost. So conversations do not have to be volcanic or painful. They can be graceful and kind and caring and open, even as they are also difficult. Okay, so difficult. I don't know if you're, this again, most of you were at my thing last week, but I talked about emotions that you can have what are considered positive and negative emotions at the same time. You can be terrified and excited. You can be angry and proud. You can have a difficult and yet caring conversation. Both of these things can occur because emotions actually aren't good and bad, they just are. And it's a matter of how big they are and whether they distort our vision. Okay, so that's how you need to think about your emotions. So when you need to have a tough talk, here's some stuff that you can do. Beginning with the end in mind is outline, and I mean outline, like write it down. And if you're like me and you can go super TV snow really easily, it's a trauma response for me, so it's something I can't stop. But I need to be able to pull myself back from it before it becomes overwhelming. Write it down, bring it with you, right? You're not going to be like, I have notes, because that doesn't start a good conversation. Good, because someone's like, you've got a checklist of all the shitty things that they've done or how bad they are. But what you can say is, I have some thoughts, and I've got these things here. I just want to make sure I don't forget. And that you just leave it at that. So you outline your conversation so you don't get derailed. And what's going to derail you is the emotion. Write out what you want to say. It doesn't have to be word for word. I like to write bullets, sort of like main points. Knowing that, and this is really important, no matter what, you cannot control that person. And sometimes you may go into a conversation wanting someone to either apologize or to somehow notice that they've been a bit of a dick or they've not been performing. But you have to go into the conversation knowing they may have none of those revelations, or they may not reveal those revelations to you because perhaps they have some issues going on with honesty, right? And integrity. And maybe they feel unsafe sharing their vulnerability. But you got stuff that you got to say, so you got to make sure that you get it out. Okay, so you can't control them, but you can control yourself, right? And what you say and how you come across. Like, these are things that are really, really important. So you've got to make sure that you're paying attention to them. So the other thing, which I find really, really great here, is I want to leave the conversation ... So you got to have a conversation with someone, anyone. And this could be not even a difficult conversation. It's just an important one. Like my parents, hey guys, do you have a retirement plan? Your health isn't that great. We haven't really talked about it. My parents are weirdly in love with death and yet never talk about it. Don't get it. So I may have to have a conversation that's very uncomfortable for them, and yet it's very, very important. So I want to make sure I leave the conversation knowing that my parents have a plan, or knowing that they're going to investigate and I'm going to follow up with them in 2 weeks, and then we're going to talk about it again, or at least that I have a follow up. Okay, so I want to leave the conversation. How? Write that out, and that way you go in. The other beautiful thing about doing it this way with all the writing stuff down is that through the reticular activation system of our brain, we start paying a lot of attention to the parts of the conversation that allow us to guide it in that way. So I don't know how many people have told me, I'll do some work with them. We'll have some conversations about something they want to work on. And then they go away and they're like, oh my God, like it fell out of the sky. No, it didn't. When you think about these things, you tell your brain what to pay attention to, you are also showing up different in the world. You just don't know it. You're inside the jar and you've changed the ingredients, but you can't read the ingredients, right? You don't know that a couple things have shifted. Your mindset has shifted. The way you have conversations, your intonation, how you just show up in the world is just a little bit different. So it feels like it's falling out of the sky. It's not. You're doing it. Congratulations. Take ownership. Okay, so start with the end in mind. That's the first one. The next thing, which is really funny, is removing emotion, not invalidating it, but understanding that emotion is the super derailer of all these conversations. So if you're afraid of hurting them because you have some tough messages to get across, but they're necessary, you don't want to falter and end up the conversation just saying, which is what happens in nice conversations. Well, let's just see how we can make things work. Not doing that either. Nope, nope, extra nope. We're not going to make things work. We're going to make things better. We're going to make it so we're going to make some changes. We're going to create understanding. There's going to be a difference going forward, right? So you have to get in touch with two sides. You're concerned for the other person. You need to understand, am I derailing myself because of some sort of connection I have with this person, right? Like, the worst thing you can do is hire friends and family. Why? Because if something goes wrong, holy Hannah, these conversations become like dynamite, or they're really hard to have. And they usually end badly, and then no one talks to each other. Okay. And you want to know the truth. What is your truth? Okay. So you are concerned about the person. You want them to understand. You don't want them to feel bad. You also can't control if they do or don't. And plus, if they've been doing something that you need to correct them on, they're going to feel guilt and shame. It's the emotion. How big it is determines if they go instantly into defense and like punch you in the face mode verbally, or whether they sit back and kind of go, okay, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to continue like this. Help me change. You don't know where they're going to go, right? But you can have a care for the person, but you must also have super care for the truth. So if someone is truly not ready for the conversation and is openly argumentative or defensive, then that is the truth, right? You have to let your truth be your guide, not your emotions, right? So if the person goes off the rails, right, and they go super, super angry, ooh, let's make them angry, right? Unhappy teeth, big eyebrows. Okay, if they turn into that scary headless two-dot wonder, you go with, okay, I am caring for the person, but I am sticking to the truth. Okay. You cannot waver based on the person. You must continue to hold your ground. It's one of the hardest things you're going to do. You're going to be like, I can see how they're feeling, which is why we get into validating them. Because if they turn into this monster, right, that now has a head, we now need to validate that that's okay. There is nothing that will decompress someone's volcanic reaction to something than truly validating that what they're feeling, you can see. Do not try to say, I understand. You don't. You're the one having on the one side of the conversation and they're on the other. You may or may not have been in their situation before, but regardless, you certainly are not them. But what you can say is that you can see them. I can see. That's how you start. I can see that this is making you really upset. I can see, because this is what you can do. You can see that they're having a hard time with this, that you may not agree with how things have turned out. You may also, if you wanted to, another coaching question that I was taught when I was certified was, what is it about this that is bringing up such big emotions? Which is a really, really good question. So now that's an exploratory. So these are observing questions, an exploratory conversation. If the person is capable, if they've completely like lost their noodle, it might not be the one you want to lead with. But what is it about this guy? Not what, not why. Not why are you acting this way? Don't ask that question. What is it about this thing that we're talking about that is bringing up such big emotions? Don't call them bad. They're just big. And then they'll give you more information. Then you revalidate. I can see why you would be like that. I can see why this would make you want to, hit me with a baseball bat or whatever it is. Again, I'm going extreme. 99.9% of conversations never get this volcanic, but if they do, you got to plan for that so you can stick your ground. You never want to be caught off guard. So validating the person is incredibly important. You validate their reactions through conversation. Okay. Sometimes there's another thing. I don't know if you have to use this carefully. I've never used it well because I usually, well, you'll see why in a second. But sometimes if someone is really angry and they've raised their voice, you raise your voice to the same level, but then you start to lower it, right? And then theirs comes down with you. So it's a way of using your voice and your volume to come up to their level, and then you go down a little bit, and then they de-escalate. The reason it doesn't work for me is I usually go to their level and then I keep going, right? I hit emotional dysregulation, they get all fired up, and then my emotions get too big, and then I run away because that's not practicing what I have here. The validating part, I can't tell you, once you get the knack of it, can be incredibly powerful in any situation. If you have a client situation, clients calling and they're real mad about stuff, I can see why that would make you really pissed off, Mr. Client, right? Let me get on that. Here's what I'm going to do, right? Validate, validate, validate. If someone is coming to you, so I'm going to flip the tide. You're not the one initiating the conversation. Someone's coming to you. One of the worst things you can do when someone's trying to have a difficult conversation with you is instantly go into the defensive. It's really frustrating to have those kind of conversations if someone's only being defensive. The best response is, okay, wow, this is how this makes me feel, or just really go into understanding what drove the behavior, but also maybe seek to understand more, because if you've done something that has pissed somebody off but you can't quite understand why it pisses them off, just help me understand. Okay, so again, there's lots of different little tricks you can do to keep a conversation going in the right direction. The next stage, once you've so again, we have, what have we done here so far? We have begun with the end in mind, removed emotion, we validated the person. Now we're going to get agreement. This is like a sales tactic. You want to get people to say yes to you. You want them to do little, what are called trial closes, little mini yeses all the way through the conversation. It keeps them in agreement. And if you hit a no, it's a little no, so you can circle back and do a little bit of investigative work, as opposed to you have this long conversation, and you wait to the end and they're like, no, I don't get it. Or no, I don't want to, or, whatever. Now you got to go back in the conversation and figure out where they started to disagree with you. So you can do this at the end of the conversation, but I also like to do this throughout the conversation, again, in little mini ways. You can do it at the end or middle of the conversation. So what have you heard me say? If you say, do you understand? What do you think they're going to say? They're going to say, yeah. Yep. Uh-huh. No problem. I do this with my kids. I've done this since they were tiny. If they'll say, hey, I'm awesome. Can you do this? Yep. What did I ask you to do? And then they got to say it back. Okay. So what have you heard me say? Have them say it back to you. Right? I want to be sure you're going away with a good understanding of the expectations we have for each other, right? And for the situation. If they distort your words, no, I'm not saying the distorted thing. I'm saying that this is what we've talked about. You go back to your truth, the thing you wrote down at the beginning. You go back to the truth, and you say, okay, no, this is what's going on. And then you might have to go through the process of removing emotion and then validating again. But getting agreement, little agreements throughout, and the big agreement at the end. But you have to have them say it back to you. So what have you heard me say? And have them say it back. Did they get it? And if they didn't, then you got to go back and figure it out. It's a really, really important one. Don't just ask a yes or no question. You got to keep it going by getting agreement, but verbal agreement, and not just a yes, no. Have them say it back. So I think this is, nope, we got two more ideas. So I lied, it's a little bit more than half an hour, but dealing with defensiveness. Ooh boy, because you're going to get this if you have to have a necessary conversation. First of all, don't let their defensiveness defensiveness puts you off. It's going to happen. Okay? Be empathetic, return to the issue, clarify your points, validate their anger. Again, that's so important, right? And that they can have a strong emotion. Reassure them that you're going to help them get to the next stage. You're not going to do it for them, but you're there. And then uncertainty can often be the driver of emotions at this stage. So if they feel at all unclear about anything, you have to make sure that they achieve clarity. Circle back, go through it again, go through it as many times as you want. But this is how you diffuse defensiveness. It's all about, again, the validating of the emotions, your ability to be empathetic, your ability to regulate your emotions, because if you fly off the handle, the whole thing's gone, right? And then again, return to that clarity. So that's a very simple way of dealing with defensiveness, right? Just be clear, unequivocal, and calm. And last but not least, this is the important one, don't be squishy. Okay? This is where you either end falling off the nice rails or you stay kind. Okay? At the point where you are having conversation, whoop, you have decided on how you want things to go. You know how you want them to go. Okay? You already know. You wrote at the beginning. This is cool. So you have to make sure that it actually goes through. Don't make it hard for yourself by going squishy and backing it into making it work, right? Or we'll work it out, or we'll figure it out. Those are nice phrases. They're not getting you anywhere. No wiggle room. This is unequivocal. Say back to me what you think. Okay, we're in agreement. Yes, wonderful. Okay, here's the plan, right? No false expectations or vagueness. Well, let's see how it goes. No, you won't. It's not going to go any better than it was before. You're not going to see how it goes. You're just going to go and do stuff. Do not soften false news with, tough news with falsehoods. And of course, because you're going to have to do it all over again. So the don't be squishy part is how you maintain your kind, firm, backbone versus going squishy and falling into niceness. If you can practice these things, right? So if we start right up at the top, begin with the end in mind, remove emotion, validate the person, get agreement all the way through, deal with their defensiveness again, probably all the way through, and then just stick to your guns. Don't be squishy. Every conversation you have from here going forward is going to be amazing. I highly recommend you watch this video again and you go through it and you practice each one of these things the next conversation you have. Just think of any conversation you're going to have going forward. Big or small, it doesn't really matter. Practice on ones that don't matter, right? Practice with your husband, practice with your friends. Hey, I'm trying to be better at having conversations. I want to do this. Let's talk about, I don't know, something really volcanic like elections. Haha, that can be a lot. But you can do that. Practice, to Catherine's point, yes, practice sounds good because practice is how we get better at these things. So again, as always, if you need any help with this stuff, you can book that call and I'm happy to go over these conversations with you. This replay for this will go into the Facebook group, and I realized about 5 minutes after I started that I hadn't given you guys these pages, so I'll also include those in the Facebook group. So if you haven't joined, it's in the email. You can just join that. It's absolutely free. So all I want for you guys is to be able to go and have the necessary conversations that need to be had, but are often avoided because we're too afraid because we don't have a framework. Now you have a framework. Go and be awesome. I'll stick around for questions. Appreciate you guys coming to my 36-minute webinar today, talking about important conversations that we can have so that the world is a better place because you learned to have a better call.